For generations, marriage was seen as the final jewel in the crown of a successful man. It was proof of his maturity, a milestone of his stability, the ultimate validation of his standing in society. But a quiet shift is happening. A shift not discussed at dinner parties, but carefully considered in executive offices and in the minds of the most valuable men. For successful men today, marriage is no longer an inevitable achievement. It has become a strategic decision, and a risky one. Make no mistake, this is not a fear of commitment. Men who build empires, lead teams, and face volatile markets do not know fear. No, this is something entirely different. This is the result of a rational analysis, a cold calculation of what they stand to lose, and the potential cost is staggering. It is the loss of financial autonomy, the ultimate decision-making power over the empire they built with their own sweat and blood. It is the loss of time and energy, the most precious fuel for pursuing a mission, a purpose greater than themselves. It is the erosion of their social networks, the relationships and brotherhoods that forged them, now shrunk within the four walls of the family unit. And most importantly, it is the risk of losing their very core identity, the man they fought to become. But all of these are just symptoms of a deeper problem, a fatal flaw in the structure of modern marriage. That flaw can be summarized in two words: asymmetric risk. This is a concept any smart investor understands intimately. It is when you enter into a deal where your potential for loss is nearly infinite, while the potential for gain is increasingly uncertain and limited. The modern legal system, particularly divorce and asset division laws, has turned marriage into such a contract. The man bears the overwhelming majority of the financial and legal burden if the marriage fails. This is not bitterness, this is pattern recognition. And for a man who values his freedom, his assets, and his future, ignoring this risk equation is not just naive. It is a form of self-destruction. To truly understand this shift, we must set emotions aside and analyze marriage from a 21st century perspective, a cost-benefit and legal risk analysis. And when we do, the numbers speak for themselves, coldly and clearly. Let us start with the undeniable fact, a truth documented in countless studies by Western sociological institutions. 70 to 80% of all divorces are initiated by women. This is not a random occurrence. This is a pattern. Successful men who make their living by identifying patterns and calculating risks cannot ignore such an overwhelmingly lopsided statistic. They begin to ask themselves, why is the emergency exit button on a marriage almost always pushed by one side? The answer lies in the next layer of analysis, the legal system. The modern family court does not operate as an impartial arbiter, but as a machine designed for protection. But protection of whom and of what? The rules of asset division, child support, and especially alimony are written into the law. They ensure a continuous flow of resources from the man even when he no longer has access to the family structure he once built and provided for. Let us be blunt. Marriage, legally, is not a romantic vow. It is the most binding financial contract a man will ever sign in his life. And ironically, he often signs it without legal counsel, clouded by emotion and social pressure. He willingly enters into an agreement where the terms of termination are almost always pre-written against his interests. This is not a partnership, it is a potential liability. But why is this contract terminated so often? This brings us to the core of the issue, a harsh psychological truth that society tries to conceal. Love in modern marriage, in the vast majority of cases, is conditional. It is not based on your intrinsic value as a human being. It is based on your utility. You are a provider. You are a problem solver. You are an emotional shield. You are a function. The moment that utility diminishes, whether through job loss, health issues, or simply because familiarity erodes attraction, the foundation of that love begins to crack. And that is when the legal system is activated to ensure the financial utility continues to be extracted. This is the point where the successful man, the man with an investor's mindset, stops and does the math. For him, marriage is no longer a safe investment. It is seen as a transaction with an increasingly low psychological and financial return on investment, or ROI. He is asked to invest everything: his past assets, his future earning potential, his time, his energy, and his very autonomy. And what is the return? Companionship, emotional stability. In the modern world, these are no longer guaranteed returns. They have become highly volatile variables. So, the risk equation becomes clear. Invest 100% of your assets and freedom in a deal that has up to an 80% chance of being unilaterally liquidated by your partner, after which you will not only lose half of your existing assets, but also be required to pay a portion of your future income to them. Would you accept such an investment in business? Absolutely not. So why would you accept it in your life? This is why successful men are making a rational choice. They are not rejecting love. They are rejecting a bad contract. They are choosing to invest in assets they can control: their careers, their skills, their health, and relationships based on mutual respect, not legal obligation. They are choosing to invest in assets, not in a liability. If the legal system is the visible iron trap, then biological programming is the invisible wiring that controls it. To understand why such a risky contract is accepted by millions, we must move from the courtroom and deep into the primal source code of humanity. We must talk about power dynamics and evolutionary programming. Any man who has been in a long-term relationship has noticed a predictable pattern of behavior, a pattern that is alarmingly familiar. The courtship phase is a masterclass in marketing. This is the stage of maximizing attraction and minimizing conflict. Agreement is at its highest, demands are at their lowest. Sex is an expression of desire and connection. Interests are shared, conversations last late into the night. She appears to be the perfect version of a companion. After commitment is secured, especially after marriage, a slow, almost imperceptible reversal begins to take place. The power dynamic starts to shift. Sex is no longer about connection. It gradually becomes a transactional currency, a reward for good behavior, or a tool for control. Agreement diminishes, giving way to increasing demands. The woman who was once eager to please now becomes the one who is entitled to be pleased by default. This is not conscious manipulation. Understand this clearly. This is evolutionary programming at work. A program that has run successfully for millions of years, designed for one party to secure resources and commitment, and then to optimize that deal for maximum benefit for herself and potential offspring. The man who does not understand this program becomes its victim. And what determined his attractiveness in the first place? This leads us to a fundamental principle of human psychology, the scarcity principle. A man's attractiveness does not lie in his niceness or his compliance. It is tied to his independence, to his own mission and purpose. Being constantly available, always agreeable, and putting her above everything else is not a signal of love. In the language of biology, it is a signal of low value and a lack of options. It signals that he has nothing more important going on in his life. And the woman's evolutionary programming interprets this behavior as genetic weakness and social inadequacy. No matter how much she consciously appreciates your efforts, her subconscious attraction mechanism shuts down in the face of your neediness. Respect erodes, desire fades. And now, we arrive at the root of it all. The fundamental dynamic behind these patterns has a name, a term modern society often shuns, but one that is the key to understanding everything. It is hypergamy. Hypergamy, in its essence, is the biological tendency of women to seek, pair with, and marry a man of equal or higher status, resources, and value. This is not a conscious choice, nor is it a moral failing. It is an evolutionary operating system, a pre-installed software designed to secure the best possible genetic and resource outcome. Hypergamy explains why women are attracted to success, power, and ambition. And it also explains why, when a man no longer meets this higher than criterion, or more importantly, when a better option appears on the market, their attraction and loyalty naturally wane. They are programmed to constantly seek to optimize their position. And here's the harsh truth for successful men: your very success makes you a prime target. You are not just a good option, you are the optimal arrangement. You are the final prize in the game of hypergamy. Getting you is a victory in terms of evolutionary strategy. Realizing this is not pessimism, it is strategic awareness. Successful men today are no longer naive to these dynamics. They recognize they are not just entering a relationship, but are a target in a biological optimization strategy. And in a game where you are the target, the smartest move is often not to play by rules that are set up against you. If legal risk is the price of failure, and biological programming is the dynamic of the game, then the erosion of personal sovereignty is the daily price paid even in a supposedly successful marriage. This is the psychological warfare that takes place silently behind closed doors. And the primary weapon in this war is one of the most subtly destructive mantras ever created, cleverly disguised as folk wisdom: happy wife, happy life. Do not take this phrase lightly. This is not a recipe for happiness. It is a subtle directive for self-abnegation. It programs a man that his primary responsibility is not the pursuit of his own happiness, but the management of another person's emotional state. It creates a clear hierarchy. Her happiness is the goal. Your happiness is the means to achieve that goal. This is not a partnership. It is a perfectly marketed master-servant relationship. And as a man follows this program for years, two dangerous psychological syndromes begin to form. The first is learned helplessness. After countless attempts to express his needs, desires, or opinions, only to be met with conflict, discomfort, or emotional punishment, he begins to learn a lesson. He learns that resistance only creates more problems. So, he stops trying. He stops asserting himself. He becomes a reactive entity, existing to solve problems, provide solutions, and absorb emotional burdens, rather than proactively shaping his own life. This leads to the second, more insidious syndrome: domestic Stockholm syndrome. Trapped in an environment he cannot exit without massive losses, the man begins to identify with the goals of his captor. He starts to defend the very system that exploits him. He convinces himself that his sacrifices are proof of love, that his discomfort is selfish, that a real man always puts his family first, regardless of the personal cost. He becomes the warden of his own prison. And this system is reinforced at every level of society. The media glorifies the father and husband who sacrifices everything. Religion teaches that selflessness is the highest virtue. Even other married men participate in reinforcing this myth, because to admit the truth would be to admit their own psychological defeat. But for the successful man, there is a final consequence, a loss more devastating than all the rest. I call it ambition domestication. Think about this: the drive, the focus, the ruthlessness, and the vision. The very qualities that helped a man build a career, create value, and achieve success are a fierce fire. Marriage, in its modern structure, demands that this fire be rechanneled. The energy once used to conquer markets, innovate products, or pursue a grand objective is now siphoned off to maintain domestic harmony. Ambition. Domestication is the process by which a man's engine of achievement is re-engineered to power a machine that serves the emotional needs of another. The wild fire that once yearned to build an empire is tamed into a small flame in the hearth, just enough to keep the house warm. He stops taking career risks because he needs stability for the family. He stops pursuing massive opportunities because they demand too much time and focus. And here is the final tragedy. The very qualities that made him attractive and successful in the first place, his independence, his ambition, and his focus on his mission, are the first things this system seeks to dismantle and neutralize. It takes away the very weapons that helped him win and leaves a safe, predictable, and manageable version, a domesticated version. So what is the alternative path? A life of bitter solitude? A cynical isolation? No. That is the thinking of the old system, a false choice designed to make you fear freedom. The true alternative is not a rejection of connection. It is the pursuit of a higher form of existence, a state that society has tried its hardest to make men forget. It is the path of building absolute psychological self-sovereignty. And this path begins with understanding a core paradox, a profound truth the modern world refuses to teach men. The less you need a relationship, the better your relationships become. Let me repeat that. Neediness is the enemy of attraction. Dependency is poison to respect. When you approach a relationship from a position of needing to be completed, you have automatically given away your power. You have become the applicant, not the selector. This is why forward-thinking, successful men are completely changing their strategy. They are no longer looking for their other half to complete them. They are focused on becoming whole in the first place. And the solution is not to play a more sophisticated game. The solution is to build a life so complete that having a partner becomes a strategic choice, not an emotional necessity. This requires you to become psychologically self-reliant. It means building a life so compelling that even solitude is enjoyable, making any partnership have to truly add value rather than just filling a void. It means developing a purpose, a mission that is greater than any single relationship. When your mission is your North Star, relationship drama becomes a minor distraction, not the center of the universe. And most importantly, it means ceasing to seek validation from external sources, especially from women. Your self-worth must come from within, from your achievements, from your discipline, from keeping the promises you make to yourself. But how do you build such a life concretely? The old model taught men to put a woman at the center of their universe and build their life around her. The man of the future, the psychologically sovereign man, rejects this flawed structure. Instead, he builds his own value ecosystem. Picture it. This is a system designed by you, for you. The central pillar of this ecosystem is your meaningful mission and career. This is the primary engine that generates value, confidence, and direction. The foundation is rock-solid physical and mental health, a strong body, a disciplined mind. This is what fuels everything else. Surrounding it is a brotherhood network, a group of other high-quality, like-minded men who challenge and support you. And woven into it are deep hobbies and passions, activities that bring you joy and personal growth, completely independent of anyone else. In this model, a woman is not the center of the ecosystem. She is a welcome guest, a potential collaborator, someone who can add immense value to that ecosystem. But she is not the ecosystem. The existence and strength of this ecosystem Do not depend on her presence or her departure. This is not loneliness. This is freedom. This is not selfishness. This is self-respect. The man who has built this ecosystem no longer operates from a place of lack. He operates from a place of abundance. He is not looking for someone to complete him. He is looking for someone worthy of sharing his completeness with. So where does this leave us? The truth is exposed not to create bitterness, but to bring clarity. Understanding is not meant to build walls, but to give you the power of choice. Remember this: true independence does not mean loneliness, it means choice. And true love is not a transaction where one party must sacrifice for the other to benefit. True love enhances both people. It creates energy instead of consuming it. It expands possibilities instead of limiting them. The modern man, especially the successful man, is not shying away from marriage because he is afraid or because he has become jaded. He is shying away from it because for the first time in history, he is armed with knowledge. He understands the psychological dynamics. He is aware of the biological programming, and he is sober to the legal risks. And this is the final answer. The number one reason successful men are avoiding marriage is not because they hate women or fear commitment. It is something far simpler and more powerful. It is because they have become game aware. They are no longer playing blindly. They see the board, they understand the rules, both the written ones and the hidden ones. They are aware of the asymmetric risk. They see the power dynamics at play. And when faced with a game where winning is never guaranteed, but losing can cost you everything you have built, your career, your assets, your freedom, and your very identity, the smartest player does not try to win at all costs. The smartest player chooses not to play. He chooses to step away from the board and instead build a kingdom of his own. A kingdom built on the foundations of self-sovereignty, self-respect, and purpose. And from that kingdom, he can interact with the world from a position of strength, not need. He can love, he can connect, he can partner, but he does so on his own terms. The final choice is always yours: to continue playing a rigged game or to become the designer of your own. The difference is not in the circumstances, it is in the awareness. Choose wisely,